and maybe this is just you and I talking here, Connor, cameras off. With every game they win, Ohio State, the Buckeyes.
Yeah.
And every touchdown they score, because there's a point in these games, they look like national champions. They're scoring touchdowns whenever they want.
Yep.
It gets a little more embarrassing, doesn't it? Welcome back to another episode of the KarterKast. My name is Dylan. Connor, there are a lot of 18 to 24-year-olds with an underbite with the area code 614740 that are absolutely furious to see me hosting this show today. Absolutely furious. Connor, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. You know, it's one of your worst takes of all time. Ohio State rolls, and all of a sudden you get promoted to host the first show of 2025?
Before we get into that, can we haven't had a full show in what feels like since week 4 of college football.
Yeah, the wheels are falling off this thing.
I mean, first you're gone,
well,
and then Karter's gone. Well, PTO is like, normally that's limited. Like you get, you get a week or so. But anyway, Karter's going to be gone. He has a flight. It's just us. Karter did want me to relay a message. He actually texted me privately outside of the group chat, and he said he formally apologizes for all of the Big Ten slander with Penn State and Ohio State both being in the college football playoff semifinals. And then, obviously you have Oregon. Actually, 2.5 Big Ten teams in the college football semifinal.
So what, Notre Dame's half Big Ten, half ACC?
I think that's what we agreed on last episode, 2 episodes ago, maybe.
I'll take that. Yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah, we'll give Notre Dame half ACC, half Big Ten. Let's start with college football. So this is going to be like a mega episode. We're going to recap the week's actions. I don't know about you, Connor. I don't know if you've kept an eye on the comments, but there are a lot of people clamoring for, when's the next show? When's he going to own up to his take? No mention of the correct score prediction on Boise State, Penn State. They just want to talk about Ohio State, Oregon. So we're going to.
That's how it goes, Dylan. That's just how it goes.
And are we going to talk about the fact that we got like 30 more subscribers on the YouTube channel these last 3 days, or what Karter say, like 400 more TikTok followers the last 3 days? If you want me to stop so bad, then stop following us when I do it, right?
I was going to say, love it or hate it, love the takes or hate the takes. We appreciate the engagement no matter what. So.
Oh yeah. And that the beautiful thing about YouTube, I think this is my New Year's resolution, is I want KarterKast, DylanKast to get so big that I don't have to respond to the comments anymore. Because there's a part of me that's like, you respond to the comments, they come back to the content. That's a positive signal. It gets pushed to more people. I want to get so big I can retire from responding to comments.
Well, the best is whenever we have a video pop up enough and then people argue with themselves in the comments. It's like back and forth with people just commenting. That's the best.
It's doing our dirty work for us.
Exactly. And sometimes I'll just scroll through the weeds and be like, thank you. Like, some people will be defending us. And I'm like, wow, you don't see that very often, so thanks.
You don't. It's the people that want to be miserable that's usually in those comments. Before we get into it, Karter's not here. When the cat's away, the mice will play. Give me a lowdown on the holiday break. You got any bones to pick? You see any movies, any TV shows? Squid Game 2?
I have not seen Squid Game 2 yet. I've been watching Landman, actually. Actually pretty good.
What's a Landman?
It's kind of like Friday Night Lights or Dallas or a show along those lines. Okay. But Billy Bob Thornton is great. So I implore people to watch it just for Billy Bob Thornton alone. It's almost like it's directed by Taylor Sheridan, who did Yellowstone. It's almost like he just opened the script up and said, hey, Billy Bob Thornton, freestyle, do whatever you want. It's hilarious so far. Like 7 episodes.
Why do I feel like you've mentioned that before?
I might have mentioned it when I first started it a few weeks ago. What about you, Dylan? How was the holiday break?
Holiday break was good. Crazy. It's like, I never thought I would be happy about getting back to work, but just like back into a schedule and not going everywhere all at once. Saw the Bob Dylan movie with my dad. You see, so we're on a big Bob Dylan kick right now. Watched Squid Game. Disappointed at the ending. Disappointed. Do you plan on watching it?
I do.
Okay. The end of the season should not have been the end of a season. That's what that could have been like you split a season into 2 parts.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some nefarious business going on over in Korea with that stuff. There's one more thing I watched. Oh, Carry On, the Netflix movie
with Jason Bateman.
Yes.
I haven't watched it, but it's on my list. People have been telling me to watch it.
We might need to start a movie club.
Okay.
We might need to start a movie club because Abby and I watched that great movie. I would highly recommend it. Okay. We've got Pop Culture Minute through the way. We have college football reactions to go through. We'll start with the first game, Penn State, Boise State. This was the first game with a team that had a bye. We were interested to see how this is going to play out. Penn State wins 31-14. Big Ten comes out on top. Connor, your thoughts?
Yeah, so just a blanket thought overall. All 4 teams that had a bye came out flat. Boise State, Arizona State, Oregon, and Georgia. All 4 of those teams came out flat. Not unprepared, I would say, but they look like a team that hadn't played in a few weeks, and that's exactly what it was. This Penn State-Boise State game, it went about how I thought it would. Penn State dominated on the ground, 216 rush yards. Katron Allen, 8 yards a carry. Nicholas Singleton, 7.5 yards a carry. They had over 200 rushing yards. That's what we thought. And look, Ashton Genty's awesome. He's a great story. He'll probably be a successful NFL running back, but he was held to a season low, 104 yards rushing, 2 fumbles lost after only 2 fumbles the whole rest of the season.
Yep.
Penn State was just the better team here. And talent-wise, this is what we expected to happen. And Boise State's a nice story, but this was not the year for the group of 5. And I'll tell you what, Dylan, this result cemented that I don't think the group of 5 will ever get a bye again. Some rule will be changed. They'll never get a bye again.
Now, you mentioned that this is not the year for the group of 5. And ultimately what my mind went to first was, I don't know if it's ever going to be a year for the group of 5.
Really? I could see like one every 7 or 8 years, a group of 5 team really making a run to the Final Four national title.
Okay, maybe that. I was thinking more specifically like, I guess you're right. I guess what I was thinking was the reason you put the group of 5 teams in here is for that Cinderella run. It's not for like a mass domination. But you are right. Every once in a while, we'll probably see that. Penn State, like I said, wins 31-14. It is kind of funny we talk about Ashton Genty having an off game. Literally, I'm looking at ESPN right now. It says number 5 Penn State bottles up Genty, beats number 8 Boise State, and bottling up is 30 carries for 104 yards. Like the fact that is what classifies.
They were force feeding him.
They were. They were. And if you're Boise State, like that, you really don't have another option, so you can't really blame them. So Penn State. Oh, go ahead.
I do feel like with all the incidents that occurred in New Orleans, I do feel like Penn State having 2 days of rest advantage over Notre Dame. I think that is going to play a role.
That is. I saw someone post that on X. Maybe it was like Dave Portnoy or something, or maybe Tom Fernelli. It was like, if you delay this game, you got to delay the next one too. Like you can't just put them on with like you said, 2 extra days of rest for Penn State. But that's gonna be crazy, and we'll get to that game that happened today. I have a hot take about the timing of that game when we get.
Let's hear it. Okay.
But I want to go to Texas, Arizona State. This was arguably the best game we've had. By far the best game we've had. Double overtime. Texas wins 39-31. Arizona State goes down. Dillingham, fun story, but Texas comes out on top. Thoughts here, Connor?
This was a fun game. And after all the college football slander, and then we had the Friday night Boise State-Penn State game, which wasn't really close throughout that game. The result was never up in the air. To have a game like this that went to double overtime with crazy plays and 4th and long conversions and long touchdowns at the end of the game, it was just fun. And I'm glad this happened for the college football playoff because there's far too many people that are, hindsight's 20/20, but the expansion's bad. Look at all these blowouts. Thank God Arizona State showed up. That's my first takeaway.
Now, does it just take one for you? Do you think that one close game makes it all, rights all the wrongs? And I say the wrongs loosely. I'm not really in that camp. Like, that's just the nature of college football. You're going to have blowouts. It just so happened it's the first year. Like, it's unlucky, but it just so happened that it happened this year. But does this one instance, can you shove that to the haters and say, okay, forget you guys, we got a good game?
Well, you can, but also I think the better argument is it's the first year. And I think as this thing goes on, there was going to be so many good first round games and semifinal games and years to come, quarterfinal games, that this is going to be a drop in the bucket. It's going to be a distant thing of the past where people will look back and be like, man, remember that first year, the 12-team playoff, and there was all these blowouts? I don't think this is the norm. I don't think this is the standard that's going to be held going forward. What do you think?
I hope people realize, like, the only reason that we're talking about these blowouts is because they are the only games that are happening right now that actually matter. Like, we have blowouts however many times in the regular season, and unless it's one of those marquee 7:30 games on ESPN, no one really cares. It's just, I think it doesn't surprise me people are reacting this way because it's what they're seeing. But when you zoom out and you look at it from 50,000 feet in the air, this happens more than you think. It just so happens that you have 50 other games going on any given Saturday.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that Arizona State at least gave us one data point, and I was kind of rooting for Arizona State, if you want me to be honest, towards the end of that. But Texas and I are going to have an iffy relationship moving forward. They're kind of dead to me for missing the field goals and ruining the under, but
yeah,
we know what's on deck.
I think we do, and I'm sad Karter's not here because he's been back and forth on Quinn Ewers all year. Talk about flip-flopping. Karter and the Texas quarterbacks has been flip-flopping all year. How do you feel about Quinn Ewers after this game? Because started off hot, first drive, 2 for 2, 77 yards, and that long touchdown. Rest of regulation was pretty mediocre. The team, Texas, wasn't moving the ball that well, but the final 5 minutes of regulation and 2 overtime periods, here's Quinn Ewers' numbers. 11 for 14, 161 yards, 2 touchdowns. He made some big plays the last drive of regulation and the 2 overtime drives. How do you feel about him going forward? Because the middle of that game, when Arizona State was mounting that comeback, the question marks were being raised for me on Quinn Ewers, but he kind of put a little bit of them to bed at the end there.
I don't have the stats on me, which is very unfortunate. And if I recall correctly, I think the point that I'm going to hit home here is it was impressive from Quinn Ewers, the fact that he did it when it mattered.
Right.
Are we going to hold it to this high regard considering the defense he did it against? I think next week at versus Ohio State is going to be a lot more telling than this past week against Arizona State. And I'm really kicking myself in the butt because I thought I had notes here that had from last week, but I can't find it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's kind of what it comes down to for me. I just don't think the Arizona State defense is that good. So is it as impressive that he put up those numbers late? It speaks to more where he's at situationally rather than maybe pure skill.
And you just look at the time of the touchdowns here for Texas. They didn't have an offensive touchdown from 8:14 in the first quarter through 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter. They had the special teams touchdown and whatnot, but they didn't have an offensive touchdown for the majority of that game, over 2.5 quarters. So you look at that against an Arizona State defense that, they've been fine, but it's definitely not one of the top defenses in this playoff. And you couple that with the fact that Arizona State, now this stat doesn't mean everything, but they did outgain Texas, and they had 3 turnovers on downs inside Texas's 40-yard line. This game could have gone a lot differently. There were so many missed opportunities for Arizona State, and the lack of a kicking game for Arizona State, a reliable kicker, it's haunted them all year. Mm-hmm. We all remember the rant Kenny Dillingham went on earlier this season about holding open tryouts. That really did hurt them. Like for the defense to know that you have to go for it on 4th and 8 from the 40-yard line or from the 30-yard line, that's an advantage. So 3 turnovers on downs inside the Texas 40-yard line. It's tough. I mean, this game really could have gone the other way.
I bet they have a kicker next year.
I bet they will too.
I bet that's top priority.
How much NIL budget you giving to the kicker next year?
Give it to the kicker. As long as our guy stays, I don't mind. Texas is going to be playing the winner of Ohio State, Oregon, the Rose Bowl. Real quick before we get into this, the Rose Bowl could have, just delayed their start 15 minutes, right? I mean, what are we doing here?
I think so.
I get the sunset. I get it's the Rose Bowl. Rose Bowl shouldn't even be a quarterfinal game as it is. Probably should be the national championship, but I digress. Yeah. I digress. Ohio State, Oregon. Ohio State wins 41-21. A Big Ten clash just like the Rose Bowl was designed to be, right?
Exactly, Dylan. Exactly.
I will go ahead and address the elephant in the room here. I made a staunch prediction about this game. I said Oregon was going to blow Ohio State out, and I was wrong. I will admit that. I think there's a lot of people that are happy that I'm admitting that. Jeremiah Smith looked great. Will Howard had a great game. He has looked amazing since the Michigan game. Now, but this is where I have to ask the questions, right? Okay. Because I'm watching this game. I'm watching with my in-laws. I'm got an eye on social media. And maybe this is just you and I talking here, Connor. Cameras off. With every game they win, Ohio State, the Buckeyes.
Yeah.
And every touchdown they score, because there's a point in these games they look like national champions. They're scoring touchdowns whenever they want.
Yep.
It gets a little more embarrassing, doesn't it?
Well,
if you're a Buckeye fan,
embarrassing, sure. It just makes that loss to Michigan that much more mind-boggling. To see Ohio State come out and put it on Oregon and put it on Tennessee and some of these teams that are really good. How do you blow that game to Michigan? And that sucks, because that's even if Ohio State wins a national championship, which I think there's a very good chance of now.
Oh yeah,
that loss to Michigan will always be in the back of their mind. Now, I don't think it's more important than a national title. You might differ from me in that opinion, but
yeah,
there is that little speck when you look back on this season where it's like, man, like the great season, won the national title, but we lost to Michigan. And I think that does mean something.
Now, I do want to touch on, I'm not going to go all Michigan right at the beginning. Trust me, I got my little jabs to work in there, but I'm not going to go all at the beginning. Now, if I remember correctly, did you have Ohio State or Oregon as your national champion? I believe you had Ohio. Georgia?
I did have Georgia.
We'll get to that game. Maybe it was tonight. Karter. Was it Karter that someone had like Oregon winning the Big Ten and vice versa? Oh, it's convenient that he's not here today.
Mm-hmm.
But
I know.
What are your thoughts from this game? Obviously, I think moving forward, Ohio State has to be your favorite to win the national championship.
100%, especially after what we saw from Texas against Arizona State. That staunch Texas defense that we've been praising all year, there were some cracks. Cam Scatterbo kept going at him, and they bended a little bit there at the end.
Yeah, and this is, I don't want to ruin the college football preview for the semis, but I'm really, really contemplating what my path forward is with this Ohio State team.
What's the angle? Dylan, what's the angle?
I don't know what the angle, because I know what's going to happen. Like, I know what is going to happen.
Yeah.
But, I could just keep playing the hits. Halfback dive in between the tackles. But
if you play them too much, people are going to catch on, though, which I'm shocked they haven't already.
Yeah. I think they might be. I don't know.
Maybe you put it and say Ohio State by 5 scores this weekend.
That's what I was thinking, because that's what I actually think is going to happen. But
I think so too.
We will save that for the college football preview. I think my main takeaway here is, Day has to send Sharon Moore a ring, right?
No, stop.
If it wasn't for the Michigan game, this Ohio State team is not playing with half the fervor that they've played the last 2 games.
I do agree with that. I think that Michigan loss was kind of a kick in the ass. It's like, all right, really? Like, this just happened. Now we have, this is our last chance. And in years past, that would have been it. There would have been no playoff appearance for Ohio State. Yeah.
But then again, and that kind of gets to the beauty of the 12-team playoff, is like Ohio State, even though they lost their last game against an inferior opponent, in years past, they would have been left out. Now they are still in, and they're the favorite to win it all. They're definitely the best team, and I think that's more than fair, and that's a good system to adopt. Now we could talk about the buys, but all that stuff.
That's what I was going to say. If you're Oregon, you're 13-0. You get the number 1 overall seed, and what do you get rewarded with? Ohio State in the second round, probably the best team in this playoff bracket,
and you're a dog. Like, you're a dog in your first game for being the 1 seed. Yeah, exactly. It's not wrong that they were dogs. It's wrong that that's the spot that they were in the first place. That should have
been like a semifinal game.
Yeah, probably championship, for being honest.
So Oregon's 13-0, undefeated. Did you really, in your heart of hearts, did you think Oregon was going to win this national championship? Because I'll be honest, I had 0, maybe 1% chance. I really didn't think they were going to win it. They were begging to lose.
Yeah, when I saw that they were likely going to play Ohio State, especially after that Tennessee game, I was like, this is not great. But think about, I should have brought this up with the Texas-Arizona State game. Do you think Texas, do they have a good win yet? Does Arizona State, does that win put them up there for you? Have they passed a test?
Arizona State's a pretty good win, but in terms of level of Ohio State versus Arizona State, then obviously Ohio State's miles ahead of them. Because
that's not the excuse, but when we talked about the Indianas, we talked about the Penn States, we talked about these teams that had great records, didn't really beat anybody, lost their only tests, Indiana losing to Ohio State. Texas was a team that we kind of talked about where they played Georgia twice, they didn't beat them, And do you count this Arizona State game as them passing a test?
I would say yeah, but
okay.
Do you not? I feel like
I don't know.
Arizona State's a good team. I mean, in there they were missing their best receiver, so that also plays against Texas there. But the other damning question is, if you're Oregon, would you have rather been the 5 seed and you play Clemson and then you play Arizona State and you don't play Ohio State until possibly the semis? I know you don't get the bye, but all 4 teams that had a bye lost. So does that really matter going forward?
And is the Big Ten championship worth it too? I think I wish we had an Oregon fan we could ask, like, if they care about winning the Big Ten in their first year, because that's kind of what the trade-off was. You win the Big Ten, but you're going to have to play probably Ohio State, maybe Tennessee, I guess, at that point, but probably Ohio State in the quarters. And I mean, we see how it fared for them. So
Dylan, can we talk real quick?
Yeah, let's talk.
Will Howard was dealing.
Can I?
Especially early. He had 6 completions, 165 yards, 2 touchdowns after the first 3 drives. A couple of those throws were dots.
Sure. And he looked great against Tennessee. I don't know where it came from. I don't know where it was the weekend after Thanksgiving. But here's what I will say, and a little teaser for Will Howard's in his career against Texas. Not good. Like 0-4. Quinn Ewers' revenge game.
Well, Quinn Ewers' revenge game, Texas's run game looked terrible, and Quinn Ewers is going to be under pressure the entire game. I don't know how much I love that. Ohio State had 8 sacks and 500 total yards against Oregon.
Jack Sawyer, great game. And I'm watching Jack Sawyer, and I'm watching
Cody Simon, great game.
Cody Simon, great game. And I'm watching these guys, and I'm like, I mean, these guys are playing with. They're ferocious. They're getting the job, and it's almost like these guys are so dedicated to their craft. It's like they had to have beaten their rivals, right? Like the games that matter, they had to have.
A team like that, with that mindset, surely.
You would think. I mean, you would think. And this is obviously the time I'm going to remind everybody, the only 2021 Ohio State Buckeye recruit to beat Michigan is actually Quinn Ewers, which is topically relevant because they will be playing Quinn Ewers next week. Just for anybody whose head that went over, that means no one on Ohio State's team has beat Michigan except for Quinn Ewers, who plays for Texas. Ohio State wins 41-21. They're going to be playing Texas. The last game to recap, game that actually happened today. Hot take. I like the 4 p.m. start time. Georgia, Notre Dame. Connor, what are your thoughts?
This was man. I figured this would be a low-scoring, almost a rock fight kind of game. And in games like that, which it was, turnovers and special teams are the difference makers in these games. When offenses are struggling to move the ball down the field, all of a sudden you get special teams touchdown, a return touchdown, a few sacks. Like, that is the difference in these games, and that's what happened with Notre Dame. I don't think Gunnar Stockton even played that poorly. He was 20 for 32, 234 yards and a touchdown, had a fumble. My one qualm with him is that every throw was a bullet, just a dart. He had no touch on the ball. It's almost like the receiver's open, we need to loft it a little bit, and he just puts it on a frozen rope. But he didn't even play that bad. I feel like Notre Dame's special teams and defense was the difference here. And then Riley Leonard did just enough. He only had 90 yards passing season low. But he did, you know what? He was gritty. He ran the ball, 14 rushes for 80 yards. Yeah. He made plays when he needed to. They didn't make him do too much. But I don't know, Dylan. I didn't walk away from this game. I feel like Georgia played almost well enough to win. There was just a few key plays that made the difference on the scoreboard.
A couple things I want to touch on. First one being special teams. So I initially said I thought Georgia was going to win. Kirby Smart out-coaching Marcus Freeman. And when Marcus Freeman pulled that little
do you like that?
punt, I mean, that was 100% coaching. If you were listening to the game, that's coaching. And that's the difference in these games where you say Georgia, it feels like they played better. They could have easily won this. Yeah, of course, especially when you factor in a kickoff return. Like, I don't think
fumble inside the 20-yard line when Notre Dame couldn't move the ball in the first half, and they punched it in the next play.
And I don't think that's crazy for you to say. You watch that game, especially if you look at the stat sheet, you would say Georgia had a chance to win this game. It wouldn't have been crazy. Now, what I want to say about Gunnar Stockton, you talked about the touch. How much of that do you put into just nerves, or is it a skill issue? Because to me, I would have to think that that's just being amped up, playing on the big stage. And I understand he came in the SEC championship, but I would have to assume this is a step up from that.
Well, you're starting at the Sugar Bowl and you haven't started a game all season, I think factoring nerves into that is 100% part of it. I think that definitely has to be factored in, but maybe it's just who he is as a quarterback. We haven't seen this guy throw the ball, so we don't really know. Maybe this is just who he is, and I'm sure nerves did play a part in that. And he made a few really nice throws, and there was a couple crucial drops from Georgia receivers, which we've seen all year, but I don't think he was bad. He's your backup quarterback. And I see people clamoring like, oh, like Georgia not having a competent backup behind Carson Beck's the reason they lost this game. It's not. I don't think it is. That's not the reason.
No.
I don't think so.
Now, can you take Notre Dame seriously moving forward? They have Penn State, and that game honestly interests me more than Ohio State-Texas does.
Yeah, I think they have to be taken seriously. I got a stat here for you from ESPN Stats and Info. Notre Dame is the first team to have 3 sacks and 3 forced fumbles in a college football playoff game. They did that in the first half. So this defense, yes, it's against Georgia, but a lot of these Georgia offensive linemen or defensive players, like these are guys that will potentially be pros in next year or a couple of years from now. It's not like Georgia's a bunch of scrubs out there. Yes, they're playing with the backup quarterback, but it's Georgia. It's Kirby Smart. So I want to credit the Notre Dame defense, even against the backup quarterback. They looked legit. They were in the backfield a lot.
That's kind of my takeaway from this game, is that you can't just write Notre Dame off anymore. And that's something I did. I was talking about the Northern Illinois loss and how everybody just completely forgot about that. But my only worry would be they're one-dimensional. They're a one-dimensional team. But we've seen one-dimensional teams win national championships before, so it might not be that big of an issue. I want to pose the question before we move on to the NFL. Actually, maybe a couple questions. What is the national championship matchup that you want to see from a viewer perspective?
From a viewer perspective, oh man, that's tough. Because the thing is, I feel like I would want to see Ohio State and I want to see Penn State. But then it's like we've already seen that. From a viewer standpoint, I kind of want to see something new. Is that crazy?
No, my answer was going to be Ohio State, Penn State, but that might
that's mine too. But
that might just be But think about the storylines too. It's Ryan Day. You say whatever you want, coaching for his job. You got James Franklin, who's hardly ever been able to beat Ohio State. Like from a storyline perspective, and I get what you're saying about not wanting to see the same game again, but the fact that they're in the Big Ten together, it's almost like it almost adds another layer. Like it's almost like a rivalry.
Yeah, I think that matchup would give us the best game from a viewer standpoint. I think Ohio State, Penn State would be my favorite matchup to watch. Because let's be honest, if it's Notre Dame, Ohio State,
really,
I don't know how close that game
Notre
is.
Dame defensive line against an Ohio State offensive line that's looked better.
True.
Not all starters by any means.
Okay, but if let's say Texas somehow beats Ohio State, are they favored in the national championship against Penn State or Notre Dame? I think they have to be.
Yeah, probably. Maybe not Notre Dame. Yeah. I don't know. That's tough.
Well, how do you feel about the Final Four as a whole? Because we can dive into this. There's only one SEC team here, and it's a team that just won the conference.
I mean, we could dive. One SEC team, 2.5 Big Ten teams,
and a half an ACC in there.
It's starting to be a little suspect why Karter is missing this. The Big 12, one of the Big 12 representatives, or I guess the Big 12 representative.
Yeah.
Yikes. Yeah. And all of a sudden Karter's not here. Should have got Chase to fill his spot. Number one Ohio State fan.
I wouldn't have had to say a word. It's just been you and him going back and forth.
Yeah, you've been a bystander. You got whiplash like you're at a tennis match.
Producing. Yeah.
So
does it worry you? Notre Dame had 10 penalties today, Dylan. Does that play a factor for you?
That's not Notre Dame football.
Come on.
But I will say, so there was one defensive pass interference I saw. I think it was on their.
Is it when Georgia? This is when they underthrew him and
yes,
a fourth down.
I mean, he didn't turn around and find the ball, sure, but that was a very soft, in my opinion, very soft penalty.
There was a couple calls in that game that were a little suspect. I won't lie.
The refs wanted to make it about them a little bit.
How about the guy on the sideline? What Parker was his name? Parker Jones, the walk-on. That's tough. That's a lot of airtime. A lot of airtime tonight.
Do you know the Chicago Cubs guy that caught the foul ball?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
kind of. What's his name? Bartman.
Yeah, Bartman sounds right. He looks like Bartman. Yeah. That was getting memed around a lot on X after that. I felt bad for the guy.
That's pretty good.
National champion. Right now, you got 4 teams left. Who you got?
To win the national championship?
Win it all, yep.
This is the obvious answer. It's Ohio State. The way they've looked since that Michigan game, the way they just dominated Oregon, who was undefeated #1 team in the country, the way they dominated Tennessee 2 weeks ago. There's not a team in this country playing better than they are right now, more well-rounded than they are. And even that running game where they spent so much money on Quinshon Judkins in the portal, which has been suspect all year, has finally figured it out against an Oregon defense, which, people were pretty high on. They were the best team in the country this year.
Yeah.
They finally figured it out. I know one of the runs was a long Travion Henderson touchdown, but these weren't just like they had some big chunk yardage plays there. And Will Howard's been playing the best he's played all year. I think Ohio State's the answer here. And I know you're going to probably pick them sarcastically, but that is the right answer.
That is the right answer. And this, I've maintained, unless Texas changes their school name to Mexis before this next game, they're gonna be set. Unless Motor Mame, unless these teams are changing to Block M's, Ohio State has a cakewalk, and they've looked like the best team. But I was watching that Oregon game, and it's just how it is. I'm really torn for what I'm going to do for this Texas game.
I'm just worried because Texas had 50 rush yards against Arizona State. Wisner averaged 2.5 yards a carry, and Ohio State only allowed 20 rush yards to Oregon, who I know they were down, so they weren't running the ball a lot, but it was domination. Now, I don't know how much success Texas is going to have on the ground, which boils down to let's put a lot of pressure on Quinn Ewers and have him throw 40 times. I don't love that. I'll be honest. I know he was good in overtime at the end of the game, but I don't love Quinn Ewers throwing 40 times against Ohio State. I think, and if you got Jeremiah Smith playing like he did this weekend, there's a reason the spreads moved from 4 to 6.5 in like a day.
Yep, it's going to be a tough one. Tough one for Texas. I had one more joke I wanted to make. Connor, I got to empty the clip.
Get it off, yep. This might be your last chance.
Texas, Ohio State. Oh, yes. With the Oregon win, at least Ohio State has beaten everybody like on their schedule, right? They had the chance to make up for the wrongs with Oregon, and there are no other hanging chads on their schedule. If they win the national championship, it will be whole. It will be complete. When they win the national championship, we need Day on that Supreme Court justice contract. You just whenever you want to leave, buddy.
That's the angle you're taking? Wait, you know what? Let me pose a question to you. If they win the national championship this year, and then once again Ryan Day loses to Michigan next year, I think people are calling for his job. The defending national champion. I think they're calling for his job.
What you don't know, Connor, is I'm in the middle of it. So it's happened every year since 22. People they're Cyber Monday shopping and complaining about it at the same time every single year. It doesn't matter what. Now, I guess in years past you had the missed field goal. It's like, oh, can't not winning the big games or whatever. But they were 8-point underdogs against Georgia in 2022. So it's like, what can you do? But yeah, it'll be. You're exactly right. You're catching on quick.
I am. I'm starting to learn how much this truly means to people. I'm also seeing the comments. It means a lot.
Well, it doesn't mean a lot to Ohio State fans right now.
Bigger fish to fry. And I want to put myself firmly in the camp that I'm not a part of this Michigan-Ohio State rivalry, but as a Carolina-Duke guy, maybe it means less because there's 2 basketball games a year instead of just the 1 football game, but Carolina could go 0-2 against Duke. If Carolina wins the national championship, I don't care. Oh. But I feel like for this Michigan-Ohio State stuff, it actually matters, which is insane. Like, matters more than a national title in some people's eyes.
Yeah.
I think that's crazy. I won't lie, I think that's a little crazy.
You have to eliminate the opportunity for the opponent to talk about it. Like, we've been through this before. We don't need to keep doing this.
Yeah, we have.
College football recap is finished. We're going to take a little break. We'll be back, preview some NFL games, Vikings, Lions, Bengals, Steelers, playoff talk. We'll be right back.